What if I told you that the very thing you are doing right now to improve your English is the exact reason you cannot speak it? What if the hours you spend every night studying, the notebooks you fill with vocabulary, and the hard work you are proud of are actually forming a mental prison that keeps you silent? 90% of English learners make the same mistake every single day, and most of them never realize it. You may be working harder than ever, sacrificing your free time and energy, but one hidden habit is completely blocking your progress. Welcome to Learn English Through Stories, the easiest and most enjoyable way to improve your English naturally.
Look at the true reality of your daily life. You have been fighting this battle for years. You wake up early to listen to English podcasts on your way to work or school. You spend your lunch break doing grammar exercises on your mobile phone. You go to bed reading English articles or watching educational videos. By all accounts, you are an incredibly hardworking student. You have given up your comfort and your free time to master this language. You want this so badly. But when the moment of truth arrives, when a native speaker turns to you in a business meeting, or an international traveler asks you for directions at a coffee shop, something scary happens. Your chest tightens, your hands grow cold. Your brain, which was full of information just a second ago, becomes a completely blank whiteboard. You open your mouth, but the words get stuck in your throat. Your heart races, your stomach drops, and you begin to sweat. You hesitate, you mumble, and you end up giving a short, childish answer just to make the uncomfortable conversation stop.
You go home that night feeling a deep sense of disappointment, frustration, and shame. You look at your textbooks and feel a wave of anger. You ask yourself the heaviest question a learner can ask. How is it possible that I can understand almost everything I read and hear, yet I sound like a complete beginner the moment I try to speak? Why is all my hard work producing no real results? You start to believe that you are simply not talented enough, that your brain is not wired for languages, or that you are too old to learn. As a language educator who has spent over 20 years helping thousands of students from all over the world become truly fluent, I am here to tell you that there is absolutely nothing wrong with your intelligence. You do not lack a language gene. The truth is, you are the victim of a massive systemic trap. This single error completely paralyzes your fluency, no matter how many hours you study.
The biggest mistake 90% of English learners make is this. You are treating English as a school subject to be memorized instead of a physical skill to be practiced. Think about how you were taught English in school. You sat quietly at a wooden desk, opened a heavy textbook, and studied sentences like a scientist studying a laboratory sample. You memorized long lists of irregular verbs, chose the correct options in multiple choice exams, and were rewarded with high grades for being perfect on paper. You were trained to believe a dangerous lie, that if you just collect enough knowledge, fluency will automatically appear one day. But language is not just data. English is not history, geography, or mathematics. You cannot memorize your way to fluency. English is a physical and mental skill, exactly like learning how to swim, learning how to play the acoustic guitar, or learning how to drive a motor car. Imagine a person who decides they want to learn how to swim. Instead of jumping into a pool, they buy 10 textbooks on the theory of swimming. They spend 5 years studying the exact movements of the human arms, memorizing how water pressure works, and taking written exams. They score 100% on every single test. They are theoretically a master. But what happens the moment you throw that person into the deep end of an actual pool? They sink. They panic. They choke on the water. Why? Because their muscles have never practiced the actual movement. Their nervous system has never felt the physical reality of water. and their brain has never developed the real-time reflex to stay afloat.
When you spend 90% of your study time reading books, memorizing vocabulary lists, and watching endless English videos, you are sitting on the edge of the pool watching other people swim. You are building an incredible amount of passive vocabulary, but your mouth muscles, your vocal cords, and your brain connections have not practiced for a single second. You are trying to fight a real-world battle using paper weapons. You are a master of English theory, but a novice in English performance. The second part of this big mistake is the psychological fear of making mistakes, which comes directly from that traditional school system. School taught you to fear errors. If you used the wrong preposition on an exam, the teacher took out a bright red pen, drew a big, ugly X across your page, and gave you a lower grade. You were trained to believe that a mistake equals failure, and failure equals public embarrassment. Now, as an adult, that childhood fear lives on as a harsh, critical voice inside your head, your internal judge. Before you even say an English sentence, this voice stops you and whispers, "Wait, is that the correct tense? Are you sure you should use for instead of since? What if your accent sounds ridiculous? Stop, don't say it. It's better to stay silent than to look foolish." This constant hesitation is what causes that painful delay in your conversation. You are trying to run a heavy, slow translation process in your head. You hear English, translate it to your native language, create an answer in your native language, translate it back to English, check the grammar rules, and then try to speak. It is mathematically impossible to achieve fluency this way. Fluency does not mean being perfect. Fluency means communication and flow. If you focus on being perfect instead of connecting with the human being in front of you, you will remain forever silent.
Let me tell you the story of a student named Kenji who came to my office a few years ago. Kenji was a brilliant software engineer, incredibly smart and successful in his home country. He had just been passed over for a major promotion at his international company. The job required leading global teams and presenting projects to clients in London. The feedback from his manager was short and painful. Kenji has excellent technical skills, but his English communication is too timid. He cannot lead an international team. When Kenji sat in the chair across from me, he looked completely defeated. He reached into his leather bag and pulled out 3 thick, heavy notebooks filled with thousands of English vocabulary words, phrases, and complex grammar diagrams that he had handwritten every single night. He looked at me with deep sadness in his eyes and said, "Professor, I study 3 hours every single night. I know the rules of this language better than my colleagues. But yesterday, a foreign manager asked me a simple question about our new software in the hallway, and I froze completely. I looked like I didn't even know my own job. I felt like a total fraud. I am terrified of speaking. I think it's time for me to give up on my international career." I looked at his beautiful, neat notebooks, pushed them completely aside, and said, "Kenji, your problem is that you are trying to be too perfect. You have built a massive, beautiful library of English in your head, but the door to that library is locked. For the next 2 months, you are completely banned from studying. We are going to stop putting new information into your brain, and we are going to start training your speaking reflexes."
We implemented a new, action-based strategy based entirely on active production. I forced Kenji to follow the 80-20 rule of fluency. He was only allowed to spend 20% of his time absorbing English through reading or listening, but he had to spend 80% of his time producing it actively, even when he was completely alone in his apartment. Every single morning, while preparing his breakfast or getting dressed, Kenji had to practice a technique called direct self-talk. He had to describe his life out loud in English as it was happening in real time, without stopping to think. He would say things like, "Now I am boiling water for my coffee. I am looking for the clean mug. The kitchen is a bit cold today. I need to wear my heavy jacket. I have a big project meeting later, and I feel a little nervous, but I am ready to work. At first, he felt ridiculous talking to an empty room, but this simple habit forced his brain to connect his physical reality directly to English words, slowly destroying the slow translation loop in his head. Next, we had to destroy his intense fear of making mistakes. I gave him an assignment that absolutely terrified him. He had to use the voice recorder on his phone to record a 3-minute summary of his daily work tasks every single evening. The rules were strict. He was not allowed to write a script beforehand. He was not allowed to pause the recording to think, and he was not allowed to delete it if he made a mistake. He had to force himself to push through the errors, to stumble, to use simple phrases when he forgot technical terms, and to finish the recording no matter how messy or broken it sounded.
The first week, he called me, sounding completely upset. "Professor, it sounds terrible. I listen to my recordings and I hear so many errors. I made 3 grammar mistakes in the first minute alone. I feel so embarrassed just listening to myself." I looked at him and said, "Kenji, those mistakes do not mean you are failing. Those mistakes mean your brain is actively breaking its old passive habits. Keep recording. Do not stop. Allow yourself to be messy." By the 4th week, a beautiful miracle happened. Kenji stopped focusing on his mistakes. Because he was forced to keep going without pausing, his brain stopped blocking his speech. He started finding a natural rhythm. He began to realize that even when he used simple words and made minor grammar mistakes, his ideas were still clear, powerful, and valuable. He realized that the sky did not fall when he said "he go" instead of "he goes."
The true test came 2 months later. The London office had an emergency project review, and they needed a senior engineer from Kenji's branch to report the latest software updates. The primary colleague who was supposed to give the presentation suddenly fell ill. Kenji was asked to step up and replace him with 0 preparation. He stood before the computer screen, facing 20 senior executives on a live video conference. He had no time to write a script, no time to look at his old grammar notebooks, and no time to be afraid. He just stood there, looked straight into the camera, and poured out his technical analysis in a powerful, energetic stream of English. His English wasn't textbook perfect. He missed a few plural words, and he used the wrong preposition twice. But he spoke with absolute confidence, great human energy, and a natural flow. He shared his passion, his data, and his solutions. When he finished, the screen was filled with nodding heads and thumbs-up emojis. At the end of the meeting, the chief technology officer in London sent a direct message to Kenji's boss. Kenji's presentation was fantastic. His energy and clarity are exactly what we need. We want him to lead the global team next month. Kenji won, not because his English had suddenly become as perfect as an English dictionary, but because he stopped trying to be an encyclopedia and started being a human communicator. He stopped studying English, and he started using English. Kenji's transformation is not a rare miracle. It is a natural law of how the human brain learns skills. And you can activate this exact same law in your life starting tomorrow morning. You do not need to buy another expensive grammar book. You do not need to sign up for another traditional course. You do not need to move to an English-speaking country. You just need to stop making the 90% mistake and commit to a few simple, powerful shifts in your daily routine.
First, you must measure your progress by your output, not your input time. Stop measuring your success by how many hours you sat quietly looking at a textbook, a vocabulary app, or a video screen. That is passive consumption, and it gives you a false sense of security. Instead, measure your progress by how many sentences you actually say out loud every day. 15 minutes of intense, active speaking to yourself or a practice partner every single day will completely destroy 5 hours of passive studying on a Sunday. Consistency beats intensity every single time.
Your brain is a muscle. It needs daily physical exercise, not a weekend marathon. Second, you must completely stop learning single isolated words. When you memorize a list of 20 random verbs or nouns, you are collecting loose bricks. When it is time to speak in a real conversation, your brain has to work way too hard, acting like a construction worker trying to cement those words together using complex grammar rules. It takes too much time. Instead, you must learn whole phrases and language chunks. Do not just learn the word decision. Learn the whole phrase. To make a difficult decision. Do not just learn the word mind. Learn the expression, I changed my mind. When you learn phrases, you are storing pre-built blocks in your mind. When you speak, you can just grab those blocks instantly and throw them into the conversation, which will immediately double your speaking speed and reduce your mental fatigue.
Third, apply the 80-20 production rule strictly to all the content you consume. If you watch a 10-minute English video or listen to a 5-minute podcast today, you must turn off the audio immediately afterward. Do not just move on to the next video. Stand up, open your mouth, and spend 10 minutes summarizing what you just heard out loud using your own voice, your own simple words, and your own body language. Force your brain to dig into its memory and search for the vocabulary. Stop being a passive listener in the audience. Become the active main character on your own stage. Fourth, you must treat your mistakes as proof of your courage. Every single mistake you make is physical proof that you are trying, that you are moving, and that you are brave. The person who speaks English with 50 mistakes a day will achieve absolute fluency within a year because they are constantly practicing the physical loop of communication. The person who stays silent because they are terrified of making a mistake will remain stuck exactly where they are for the next 20 years. Choose the mistakes. Choose the discomfort. Choose growth over safety. My friend, your past years of being stuck do not define your future potential. The reason your English has not improved is not because you are incapable, and it is not because you lack intelligence. It is simply because you have been using the wrong method. You have been rowing your boat with all your strength, but the anchor was still attached to the bottom of the sea. Today, we are cutting that anchor. You have a wonderful, unique voice, full of rich experiences, deep intelligence, and incredible value. The world does not need a perfect robot that recites flawless grammar rules. The world needs you. The world needs your perspective, your heart, and your authentic story. Step out of the prison of perfectionism. Accept the beautiful process of active, messy growth, and dare to speak. The biggest mistake most English learners make is believing that more studying automatically leads to fluency. But true fluency comes from using English, not just learning about English. Stop waiting for the perfect moment when you think you know enough. Start speaking today. Trust the process and stay consistent. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more English stories, learning tips, and life-changing lessons. Your journey to fluent English starts with one small step today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.